Hey everyone, welcome to this chill listen along video. No need to keep your eyes glued to the screen, just sit back and let it play. Use it as background music while you work, a lullaby to help you sleep, or maybe just a little something to pass the time. Today's content? Classic Japanese folktales. Alright, let's get started. The Tale of Yuriwaka Daijin. Long ago, in the capital city, there lived a young nobleman named Yuriwaka. He held the rank of a minister and was renowned not only for his exceptional skills in martial arts and learning but also for his courage and sincerity. His reputation spread throughout the capital, and many people admired and respected him. One day, Yuriwaka was ordered by his father to travel to a neighboring country as a diplomatic envoy. Accompanied by his loyal retainers, he boarded a ship and set sail across the vast ocean. However, in the middle of their journey, a sudden storm struck, causing the ship to toss violently. Eventually, they were cast ashore on an unfamiliar island. Upon landing, Yuriwaka and his men discovered that the island was home to fearsome demons. These terrifying creatures were known to capture and devour anyone who set foot on their land. Determined to protect his retainers, Yuriwaka resolved to fight the demons. When the demons appeared, Yuriwaka faced them with his unmatched swordsmanship. The demons, massive in size and possessing great strength, launched ferocious attacks, but Yuriwaka remained calm, analyzing their movements and exploiting their weaknesses. After an intense battle, Yuriwaka succeeded in slaying the demons, liberating the island. The people of the island, freed from the terror of the demons, were deeply grateful and hailed Yuriwaka as a hero. After leaving the island, Yuriwaka continued his journey across the sea. However, another trial awaited him. Among his retainers was one who envied Yuriwaka's greatness. This traitor betrayed him and pushed Yuriwaka overboard into the ocean. Swallowed by the rough waves, Yuriwaka struggled for his life. Against all odds, he survived and was eventually washed ashore on a distant beach. Waking up in an unfamiliar land, Yuriwaka resolved to stand up once more. With the help of a kind fisherman he met along the way, he began searching for a way back to the capital. Despite facing numerous challenges, Yuriwaka's sincerity and unwavering determination inspired many people who crossed his path. At last, Yuriwaka returned to the capital. Though he had every right to seek revenge, he chose to forgive the retainer who betrayed him. Reuniting with his comrades, he devoted himself once more to serving his country. Yuriwaka's great heart and his unyielding spirit in the face of adversity brought courage to those around him. He was loved and revered as a hero for many years to come. The end. The next story is The Rolling Bean Mame Subu Korokoro. Long ago, in a village, there lived an old woman in a small house. Though poor, she was cheerful and full of energy every day. One day, as the old woman was about to cook some beans, her hand slipped, and the beans fell onto the floor. "Oh no, I've dropped my precious beans." She tried to pick them up quickly, but the beans rolled away and out of the house. "Wait for me," she called, chasing after the beans. The beans kept rolling down the path. "What fast little beans," the old woman muttered as she hurried after them. Eventually, the beans slipped into a small hole in the ground. When the old woman peered into the hole, she saw a mysterious light shining below. "This isn't just an ordinary hole," she thought. Determined to get her beans back, she climbed into the hole. To her amazement, she found herself in a magical world inhabited by tiny fairies. The fairies greeted her with cheerful smiles. "Welcome, thank you for bringing us the beans." The old woman, startled, replied, "No, no, those beans were meant for my cooking." But the fairies wouldn't listen. "Since you're here, why not have some tea with us?" The fairies prepared a feast for the old woman and entertained her with delightful songs and dances. The old woman enjoyed her time in this enchanting world but eventually said, "It's time for me to go home." The fairies smiled and handed her a small bag. "This is a gift of thanks. Open it when you get home." The old woman gratefully accepted the bag and returned home. When she opened the bag, it was filled with gold and silver treasures. "Oh my, how wonderful!" she exclaimed, overjoyed. From then on, she lived a prosperous life. However, her neighbor, another old woman, heard about the story and thought, "If I drop some beans too, I'll surely get treasure." The neighbor intentionally dropped her beans and climbed into the hole. Like the first old woman, she was welcomed by the fairies. However, she greedily demanded more and more gifts. The fairies grew angry. Greedy people deserve punishment, they said, and handed her a large rock. When the neighbor returned home and opened the rock, it burst open to reveal bugs and snakes crawling out. The greedy old woman screamed and cried in shock. After that, she never acted out of greed again. The first old woman lived happily, while the neighbor learned her lesson. The end. The next story is Kantaro. Long, long ago, deep in the mountains of Ashigara, there lived a lively boy named Kantaro. He had a strong, sturdy body and wore a red bib while carrying a small axe over his shoulder as he ran through the mountains. Kantaro was very friendly with the animals. He played with bears, monkeys, deer, and rabbits. Sometimes, they would compete in tests of strength or work together to build bridges across rivers. Kantaro's strength was extraordinary. He could lift massive trees with ease and lay them across the river as a bridge. The animals were amazed and said, "Kantaro is so strong, he can overcome anything." One day, the animals decided to have a sumo match with Kantaro. First, the bear challenged him, but Kantaro pushed him back effortlessly, sending the bear tumbling. Next, the monkey and the deer tried their luck, but none of them could match Kantaro. Finally, the rabbit challenged him. Kantaro gently lifted the rabbit with a laugh and said, "Well done, rabbit, you tried your best." The animals cheered, clapping in admiration of Kantaro's strength and kindness. The stories of Kantaro's incredible strength and kind heart spread far and wide. One day, a noble samurai came to the mountains to meet him. After witnessing Kantaro's abilities, the samurai said, "With your strength and your heart, you could become a great samurai. Would you join me?" Kantaro bid farewell to his mother and decided to leave the mountain with the samurai. The animals accompanied him to the foot of the mountain to see him off. "Kantaro, do your best. We know you can overcome any challenge." And so, Kantaro left the mountain and began his training as a samurai. With his natural strength and kind heart, he eventually became a great warrior and achieved many remarkable deeds. The end. The next story is The Tengu's Cloak of Invisibility. Tengu no Kokoramino. Long, long ago, in a remote mountain village, there lived a greedy old man. He cared only about himself and paid no mind to how his actions affected others. One day, while gathering firewood in the mountains, the old man heard a strange sound. Curious, he peeked around a large tree and saw Tengu goblin-like spirits having a lively feast. They were playing flutes and drums, dancing, and merrily sharing drinks. The old man watched them intently from his hiding spot. After some time, the Tengu stopped their celebration and brought out a mysterious cloak. It was called the Kokoramino. a magical cloak that could make the wearer invisible. The Tengu began playing with it, vanishing and reappearing as they laughed. The old man thought to himself, "What an incredible cloak! With this, I could steal anything I want." When the Tengu fell asleep, the old man crept up and stole the Kokoramino. He wrapped it around himself, confirmed that he had become invisible, and grinned as he made his way back to the village. Once home, the old man began using the Kokoramino for his misdeeds. He stole crops from villagers' fields and took goods from shops. Because he was invisible, no one could catch him, and his greed grew even greater. Heh heh heh, no one will ever know it's me. Meanwhile, the villagers were troubled and confused. Who could be doing this? It's like the work of a ghost. One day, the Tengu came down from the mountains and found the old man. They already knew all about his wrongdoings and said, "Hey, you greedy old man. If you don't return the Kokoramino, you'll regret it." But the old man ignored their warning and replied, "I'll never give it back. With this cloak, I can live an easy life forever." Angered by his defiance, the Tengu chanted a spell. "We'll make sure you can never use that Kokoramino again." In that instant, the Kokoramino lost all its magic. The old man tried to use it, but it no longer worked. To make matters worse, everything he had stolen, crops, goods, and treasures, disappeared and returned to their rightful owners. Realizing his folly, the old man was left helpless. He returned the Kokoramino to the Tengu and apologized to the villagers for his actions. From that day on, he gave up his greed and decided to live honestly. The villagers, seeing his sincere repentance, forgave him and welcomed him back into their community. The old man, now reformed, lived peacefully and happily with the villagers. The end. The next story is The Tongue-Cut Sparrow Shita Kiri Suzume. Long, long ago, in a small house deep in the mountains, there lived an old man and an old woman. The old man was kind-hearted and spent his days gathering firewood in the mountains, while the old woman was greedy and quick-tempered. One day, while the old man was gathering firewood, he found a small sparrow that was injured. "Oh, you poor thing. You're hurt," he said. The old man brought the sparrow home and carefully nursed it back to health. Before long, the sparrow recovered and became close friends with the old man. One day, while the old man was out in the mountains, the sparrow pecked at some glue in the kitchen. The old woman saw this and flew into a rage. "What do you think you're doing?" she yelled. In her anger, she grabbed the sparrow and cruelly cut out its tongue before throwing it out of the house. When the old man returned home and learned what had happened, he was heartbroken. "How terrible, that poor sparrow," he said, and set off into the mountains to find it. After crossing mountains and valleys, the old man finally found the sparrow's home. "Sparrow, are you all right?" he called out. The sparrows flew out to greet him warmly. "Thank you for coming, dear old man. Please, come inside." The sparrows welcomed him with songs and dances and served him a feast. When it was time to leave, the sparrows offered him a parting gift. "Here is a small chest and a large chest. Which would you like to take?" The old man humbly replied, "The small chest will be plenty for me." He thanked the sparrows and returned home with the small chest. When the old man opened the chest, he found it filled with gold and silver treasures. "Oh my, how wonderful!" he exclaimed, grateful for the sparrow's kindness. When the old woman heard about this, she scolded him. "Why did you take the small chest? The large one must have been full of even more treasures." Driven by greed, she decided to visit the sparrows herself. The old woman found the sparrows home and demanded to be entertained. "Give me the large chest," she shouted. The sparrows reluctantly gave her the large chest. Overjoyed, the old woman carried it home and eagerly opened it. But instead of treasures, the chest was filled with snakes, demons, and terrifying creatures. The old woman screamed and ran away. From that day on, she stopped being greedy. The old man, however, continued to live peacefully, always grateful for the sparrow's kindness. The end. The next story is The Monkey Jizo Saru Jizo. Long, long ago, in a remote mountain village, there lived a kind-hearted but very poor old man. Every day, he went into the mountains to gather firewood, selling it in the village to earn just enough money to survive. One winter day, as he was in the mountains, he found a small monkey shivering in the snow. "Oh, you poor thing," he said, gently picking up the monkey and placing it inside his coat to keep it warm. He brought the monkey home, fed it, and cared for it lovingly. The monkey soon regained its health and began living with the old man. Whenever the old man went to the mountains, the monkey accompanied him. The two became as close as best friends and lived happily together. One day, the monkey suddenly spoke to the old man. "Grandfather, please don't go to the mountains today. Come with me instead." Surprised but trusting, the old man followed the monkey. The monkey led him deep into the forest. After a while, they came upon a place where several large Jizo statues stood in a row. The monkey said, "Grandfather, offer your kind heart to these Jizo." The old man knelt before the Jizo, bowed deeply, and prayed. Suddenly, one of the Jizo statues began to glow and spoke. "Grandfather, we know of your kindness. This is our gift to you." The Jizo handed the old man a bag filled with golden coins. Astonished and grateful, the old man thanked the Jizo and returned home. Thanks to the golden coins, he was able to escape his life of poverty and live peacefully. From that day on, the old man offered daily prayers of gratitude to the Jizo. He continued to live happily with the monkey, who remained by his side. The end. The next story is The Fox and the Grapes. Long, long ago, in a forest, there lived a clever-looking fox. One day, as the fox was walking through the forest, he spotted a beautiful bunch of grapes hanging from the branches of a tree. The grapes sparkled in the sunlight, looking sweet and delicious. My, what a splendid bunch of grapes! I'm feeling quite hungry, and I'd love to taste them," said the fox. The fox leapt toward the grapes, but they were hanging too high, far out of reach. "HMPH, this height is nothing for someone like me." The fox jumped again, higher this time, but still couldn't reach the grapes. Growing a bit frustrated, he took a running start and leapt with all his might. Yet, the grapes remained beyond his grasp. After several tries and realizing that no amount of effort would help him reach the grapes, the fox paused and thought for a moment. Then he said, "Those grapes are probably sour and unripe anyway. They might look sweet, but they're not worth eating." With a flick of his tail and a dismissive snort, the fox walked away. However, if anyone had seen him as he left, they might have noticed a hint of regret on his face. This tale teaches us about the sour grapes phenomenon, where people dismiss something they can't have as unimportant or undesirable. Even when we truly want something, we may belittle it when it feels out of reach. The story reminds us of the importance of understanding our limits and the value of maintaining honesty about our desires and efforts. The end. The next story is The Rolling Rice Ball Omusubi Kororan. Long, long ago, in a mountain village, there lived a kind-hearted old man. Every day, he went to the mountains to gather firewood and tend his fields. One day, the old man brought his lunch to the mountains and sat on a sunny rock to eat. As he unwrapped his rice balls, one slipped from his hands. The rice ball began to roll and roll. "Oh no, my precious rice ball!" he cried as he chased after it. But the rice ball kept rolling until it fell into a small hole. "What a strange hole," thought the old man. When he peered into the hole, he heard cheerful singing from inside. "Omusubi kororin sudden ton." Curious, the old man carefully climbed into the hole. To his surprise, he found a community of tiny mice living there. The mice were overjoyed to see him. "Welcome, grandfather. Thank you for the rice ball. Please, stay and enjoy yourself." The mice treated him to a feast and entertained him with songs and dances. Their kindness filled the old man's heart with happiness. When it was time to leave, the mice offered the old man a parting gift. "Here is a small chest and a large chest. Which would you like to take?" The old man humbly replied, "The small chest will be plenty for me." He thanked the mice and returned home. When he opened the small chest, it was filled with gold and silver treasures. "Oh, how wonderful!" he exclaimed, deeply grateful for the mice's generosity. Hearing about this, a greedy old woman decided she would get even more treasure. The next day, she went to the same mountain and deliberately rolled her rice ball into the hole. Like the old man, she was welcomed by the mice. But unlike him, she demanded, "Hurry up and give me my gift." The mice reluctantly handed her the large chest. Overjoyed, the old woman carried it home and eagerly opened it. But instead of gold and silver, the chest was filled with terrifying creatures: ogres, snakes, and centipedes. Screaming, the old woman fled. From that day on, she learned her lesson and gave up her greedy ways. As for the old man, he continued to live peacefully, never forgetting his gratitude toward the kind mice. The end. The next story is The Tale of Amano Iwato. Long, long ago, when the gods ruled the world, there was a sun goddess named Amaterasu Omakami. She illuminated the world with her brilliant light, bringing prosperity to both humans and gods. However, her younger brother, Susanoo no Makoto, was a troublemaker who caused chaos wherever he went. One day, Susanoo stormed into Amaterasu's sacred shrine and caused havoc. Furious and saddened by his actions, Amaterasu declared, "I can no longer shine my light upon this world," and withdrew into the Amano Iwato, a massive cave. When Amaterasu hid in the cave, the world was plunged into darkness. Without the sun's light, plants withered, crops failed, and both humans and gods suffered. "What can we do to bring Amaterasu out of the cave?" The gods wondered. They gathered and devised a clever plan. The gods decided to hold a grand celebration in front of the cave. They sang, danced, and laughed loudly, filling the air with joyous noise. Among them was Ame no Uzume no Makoto, a goddess known for her dancing. She performed a bold and amusing dance right in front of the cave. Her comical and energetic movements made the gods burst into laughter and clap with delight. Hearing the laughter and commotion from inside the cave, Amaterasu grew curious. "What's happening out there? Why is it so lively without my light?" Unable to resist, she opened the cave door slightly to peek outside. At that moment, the gods quickly held up the Yata no Kagami, a sacred mirror, reflecting Amaterasu's brilliant light back at her. Surprised, Amaterasu marveled at the radiant light. "What a dazzling glow! If this light exists, perhaps the world is fine without me." As she hesitated, Aim no Tajikarao no Makoto, a god of great strength, seized the opportunity to pull the cave door wide open and brought Amaterasu outside. With Amaterasu's return, sunlight once again shone upon the world. Plants began to grow, and life returned to the earth. Both humans and gods rejoiced, their smiles restored. Amaterasu realized the importance of her role and vowed to continue shining her light for the world. The end. The next story is The Clever Stories of Ikkyu-san. Long, long ago, when Ikkyu-san was just a child, he was already known as a master of clever thinking. His quick wit and intelligence impressed everyone who knew him. One day, the head monk at his temple decided to test Ikkyu's ingenuity. "Ikkyu," the monk said, "I have a challenge for you. Here is a long piece of string. Anyone can shorten it by cutting it, but I want you to make it shorter without cutting or untying it." The monk handed the string to Ikkyu. Ikkyu thought for a moment, then smiled mischievously. "Understood. I'll shorten it right away," he said. Holding up the string, he tied both ends together in a firm knot. "There, now it's shorter." The monk was surprised, then burst out laughing. "Indeed, tying it to shorten it without cutting, well done, Ikkyu." Another time, while Ikkyu was walking near the temple, a nobleman passed by. Having heard of Ikkyu's reputation, the nobleman decided to test the boy's cleverness. "Hey, you there," the nobleman called. "People say you're quite clever. Let's see if that's true. Catch the tiger painted on this folding screen. If you can do it without letting it escape, I'll reward you." Ikkyu stared at the large tiger painted on the screen, studying it carefully. After a moment, he smiled again and said, "Very well. Please chase the tiger out of the screen, and I'll catch it for you." The nobleman was astonished by Ikkyu's wit and burst out laughing. "You've got me there. I can't outsmart you, Ikkyu." In this way, Ikkyu-san solved seemingly impossible challenges with his sharp mind and quick thinking. His cleverness and humor won the hearts of many, and his stories of wisdom have been passed down through generations. The end. The next story is The Frog's Gratitude Keiru no Onjishi. Long, long ago, in a small village, there lived a kind-hearted young man. He loved spending time in nature, wandering through mountains and rivers, and was friendly with animals. One day, as he walked near a river, he saw some children playing roughly with a frog. The frog was struggling to escape, but the children held onto its legs and wouldn't let go. The young man stepped in and said, "Stop that, you shouldn't treat a living creature like this." He gave the children a small amount of money to release the frog. "Thank you, kind human," said a voice. To the young man's surprise, the frog spoke to him in human language. "I won't forget your kindness. One day, I will repay you." The young man smiled and replied, "You don't need to worry about that. Just stay safe." The frog hopped back into the river and swam away happily. Some time later, the young man faced misfortune. Heavy rains flooded his fields, and his crops failed. The entire village suffered, and food became scarce. One night, as the young man sat in his home, there was a knock at the door. When he opened it, a beautiful young woman stood there. "I've lost my way while traveling. Could you let me stay for the night?" she asked. The young man welcomed her warmly, offering food and a warm bed. The woman expressed her gratitude and said, "Please, let me help you with something in return." From the next day, the woman began helping with household chores. After some time, she said, "Please let me weave cloth for you. I can create something very special." The young man was surprised but trusted her. He prepared a loom, and the woman locked herself in the weaving room, working tirelessly day and night. Several days later, she emerged with a cloth more beautiful than anything the young man had ever seen. It shimmered with a magical glow. "Sell this cloth in town," she said. "With the money, you can help your village." The young man took the cloth to town, where it fetched a very high price. He used the money to buy food and supplies, sharing them with the villagers. One day, his curiosity got the better of him. Unable to resist, he peeked into the weaving room. To his shock, the woman was gone, and in her place was the frog he had once saved. The frog was using its own body to weave the beautiful cloth. When the young man gasped, the frog noticed him and spoke sadly. "I took human form to repay your kindness. But now that my true identity has been revealed, I can no longer stay here." With those words, the frog disappeared, leaving quietly. The young man watched the frog go with deep gratitude in his heart. From that day on, he lived peacefully, always remembering the frog's selfless act of gratitude. The end. The next story is The Demon Granny Onibaba. Long ago, in a remote mountain village, there lived an old woman who lived alone. The villagers called her Onibaba Demon Granny and feared her. Travelers passing through the mountains often stayed the night at her house, but they were never seen again. The villagers whispered that Onibaba, driven by hunger, would capture the travelers and do terrible things to them. One day, a young traveler found himself lost in the mountains as night fell. The forest grew dark, and a cold wind began to blow. Just as he was despairing, he spotted a faint light in the distance. Approaching the light, he found a small house, where an old woman greeted him. Well, traveler. It's dangerous to spend the night in these mountains. Come in and stay here for the night." Her kind words eased the traveler's fears, and he entered the house. Onibaba lit a warm fire and served him a meal. The traveler was deeply grateful and thought, "What a kind old woman." As the traveler drifted off to sleep, Onibaba began preparing something in the kitchen. The sound of her sharpening a knife echoed through the stillness of the night. "Tonight, I'll add another traveler to my collection." She chuckled menacingly, her face twisted with malice. Hearing the ominous sound, the traveler woke up, sensing danger. Peeking out from his bed, he saw Onibaba holding a large knife and approaching his room. Realizing the truth, he quickly leapt out the window and ran into the mountain forest. "Stop right there! You won't escape!" Onibaba yelled, chasing after him with incredible speed. The gap between them closed quickly as the traveler ran with all his might, praying for help. "Please, someone, save me." Just then, he came upon a large shrine beneath a tree. He hid inside, holding his breath as Onibaba passed by. At that moment, the mountain god appeared, radiating divine light. "Protect this traveler," commanded the god. Onibaba froze in place, unable to move. The god's power drained her strength, and she collapsed, unable to cause harm again. The traveler, overwhelmed with gratitude, thanked the mountain god and safely made his way back to the village. From that day on, no one ever ventured near Onibaba's house, and the place became known as the land where Onibaba vanished. The story of her demise was passed down through generations as a tale of divine protection. The end. The next story is The Straw Millionaire Warashibe Choja. Long ago, in a small village, there lived a kind-hearted but very poor man. No matter how hard he worked in the fields, his life never became easier. Yet, he always remained optimistic, saying, "Somehow, things will work out." One day, he visited a shrine and prayed, "Please, grant me happiness." To his surprise, he heard the voice of the god. Take good care of the first thing you hold in your hand. It will lead you to happiness. Following the god's advice, the man left the shrine. Soon after, he found a piece of straw lying on the ground. This must be it, the first thing I've picked up. If I treasure this, I can find happiness, he thought, holding the straw tightly as he walked. As he walked, he noticed a dragonfly buzzing around. He tied a small piece of grass to the straw, turning it into a toy that resembled the dragonfly. Just then, he came across a mother carrying a crying baby. "Could I have that toy for my child?" she asked. The man gladly handed over the dragonfly toy. In return, the grateful mother gave him 3 oranges. Continuing on, the man encountered a tired merchant who was parched and exhausted. "Please, could you spare me one of those oranges? I'm so thirsty," the merchant pleaded. The man gave him the oranges, and in return, the merchant offered him a beautiful silk cloth. The man carried the silk cloth as he walked further, eventually coming across a samurai whose cart had broken down. "If only I had some cloth to repair this," the samurai muttered. Hearing this, the man gave him the silk cloth. The samurai, deeply grateful, said, "Please, take my horse in exchange for your kindness." Leading the horse, the man came to a large mansion where a crowd of villagers had gathered. The mansion's owner noticed the horse and said, "That's a fine horse you have. Would you trade it for this mansion? I can no longer keep it due to my illness." Amazed, the man agreed. Thus, the man, who had started his journey with nothing but a piece of straw, ended up with a grand mansion. From that day forward, he lived a prosperous life, remaining as kind-hearted as ever and helping many people in his village. The end. The next story is The Ghost Who Raised a Child. Kosadate Yurei. Long, long ago, in a certain town, there lived a kind-hearted monk. Every day, he prayed for the people in the town and helped anyone in need, showing great compassion and care. One summer night, as the monk was sleeping, he heard a knock at the temple door. Knock, knock. He got up and opened the door to find a young woman standing there, looking frail and exhausted. With a tired expression, she said, "I'm sorry to bother you so late at night, but could you please sell me some food? I have this money to pay you." The monk, surprised but moved by her desperation, replied, "Of course." He gave her some rice and vegetables. The woman bowed deeply and said, "Thank you so much," before walking away. From that night on, the woman visited the monk's temple every evening, asking for a small amount of food. Each time, the monk willingly helped her. What puzzled him, however, was that the woman always carried a baby in her arms. The monk thought, she must be struggling to raise her child. How hard it must be for her. But one night, the woman suddenly stopped coming. Days passed, and she didn't return. Worried, the monk decided to follow the path she often took to see if he could find her. The path led him to a graveyard on the outskirts of town. There, he discovered a fresh grave. To his astonishment, he saw the baby the woman had been carrying, sitting next to the grave and crying. The monk looked at the gravestone and was shocked to find the woman's name carved on it, along with the date of her death. She had died some time ago. The monk realized the truth. This woman returned to the world of the living after her death, just to care for her child and ask for my help. Tears streaming down his face, the monk gently picked up the baby and made a vow. "I will raise this child as my own, and I will ensure they have a good life." From that day forward, the monk raised the child at his temple. The baby grew up healthy and strong, eventually becoming a fine adult. Thanks to the mother's unwavering love and the monk's kindness, the child was able to live a happy and fulfilling life. The end. The next story is The Scatterbrained Boy Tonchinkan Kozo. Long, long ago, in a small village, there lived a slightly odd but kind-hearted boy. Though he always wanted to help the villagers, his thinking was often a bit off, leading to unexpected results. The villagers, however, couldn't bring themselves to dislike him and often found themselves laughing or shaking their heads in surprise at his antics. One day, the boy was asked by the head monk of the village temple, "Hey, boy, take this sack of rice to the storage house out back." The boy eagerly replied, "Got it." He hoisted the heavy sack onto his shoulders and began walking. However, on the way, he thought, "Just carrying the sack there is so boring. Isn't there a more fun way to deliver it?" Suddenly, he had an idea. He tossed the sack into the nearby river, thinking, "If I let the river carry it, it'll reach the back of the storage house faster." But the river's current was strong, and the sack was swept away in no time. The boy chased after it but could only watch as it disappeared downstream. Further downriver, villagers in another village found the floating sack. Inside, they discovered a note that read, "This is a gift of delicious rice from the boy at the upstream temple. Please enjoy it." The villagers, surprised but grateful, came to thank the temple. The head monk, though exasperated, sighed and said, "Well, at least your good intentions were understood," and forgave the boy. On another occasion, the village was preparing for a festival. The villagers were struggling to raise a large festival flag when the boy stepped in and said, "Let me help." As the flag was being raised, the boy remarked, "Just putting up the flag is too ordinary. How can we make it even taller?" He began attaching bamboo poles to extend the flag's height. Before long, the flag was so tall it could be seen from anywhere in the village. However, it was too high and toppled over in the wind, causing a commotion. Despite the chaos, the villagers laughed and said, "Everything you do is so scatterbrained, but somehow, it makes us happy." One day, the boy met a lost traveler in the village. The traveler asked, "Could you show me the way to the main road?" The boy smiled and replied, "The main road is straight ahead, but if you take a slight detour, you can enjoy some beautiful scenery along the way." The traveler followed the boy's suggestion, discovering breathtaking views and meeting kind villagers. He left with gratitude in his heart. The villagers often said, "He's scatterbrained, but his heart is so warm." No matter how many mistakes he made, the boy's good intentions always brought smiles and laughter to the village. The end. The next story is The Mermaid's Tears Ningyo no Namida. Long, long ago, in the depths of the blue sea, there lived a beautiful mermaid. She had crystal clear blue eyes and a shimmering silver tail that sparkled like the stars. Her beauty was renowned among all the sea creatures. But the mermaid had one unfulfilled wish to know the human world. One day, while swimming near the surface, the mermaid spotted a ship caught in a violent storm. The ship rocked back and forth in the massive waves until it finally began to sink. Among the passengers, a young sailor was thrown into the sea, desperately crying for help. "I have to save him," thought the mermaid. Without hesitation, she dove into the water and rescued the young sailor, carrying him to the safety of a sandy beach. As she laid him on the shore, the mermaid marveled at the first human she had ever seen up close. What a magnificent being! But the mermaid could not speak human language, so she couldn't express her feelings. Before the sailor could awaken, she quietly returned to the sea. From that day on, the mermaid often swam near the shore, hoping to catch a glimpse of the sailor. One day, she saw him standing on the beach, looking out at the ocean as if searching for the one who had saved him. The mermaid longed to speak with him, so she visited the sea witch for help. "How can I talk to a human?" she asked. The witch replied, "If you give me your voice, I can give you a human form. But once your voice is gone, you can never get it back." The mermaid hesitated but ultimately agreed. She was willing to sacrifice her voice to be with the sailor. The mermaid, now in human form, appeared before the sailor. He was astonished but welcomed her warmly. Though she couldn't speak, her presence brought them closer, and they grew to understand one another. Yet, the mermaid couldn't tell him she was the one who had saved him during the storm. One day, as he saw her silently shedding tears, the sailor suddenly realized the truth. "You were the one who saved me that day in the storm, weren't you?" he said, taking her hand. "Thank you. Without you, I wouldn't be here now." But the witch's curse was strong. The mermaid's body began to weaken, as she was never meant to stay in the human world for long. Despite this, she chose to remain by the sailor's side until the very end. As her strength faded, a single tear fell from her cheek into the sea. That tear transformed into a radiant pearl. The sailor held the pearl close, treasuring it as a symbol of her love and sacrifice. He never forgot her, and every time he visited the sea, he would remember her and offer a prayer of gratitude. The end. The next story is The Fox's Wedding. Kitsune no Yumeri. Long, long ago, in a certain village, there lived a young man who loved the forests and mountains. Every day, he ventured into the woods to gather firewood, admire the flowers, and enjoy the beauty of nature. One day, as he wandered deep into the forest, he came upon a strange sight. Far along a mountain path, numerous flickering lights danced in a line, like a procession. What a mysterious sight to see so many lights moving in this remote forest, he thought. His curiosity piqued. The young man cautiously approached the lights. To his amazement, he saw a line of beautifully dressed people in traditional Japanese attire. At the front of the procession walked a dignified man in a formal kimono, and behind him followed a bride in a stunning white wedding gown. Her face glowed with an otherworldly radiance, so beautiful it seemed she couldn't possibly be human. The young man was astonished. This is no ordinary wedding procession, he realized. It dawned on him that this was a fox's wedding procession. The foxes, using their transformative powers, had taken human form to perform their secret wedding ceremony away from prying eyes. Enchanted by the ethereal beauty of the scene, the young man stood silently, watching in awe. But as fate would have it, he accidentally stepped on a branch, making a loud cracking noise. The sound startled the foxes, who all turned to face him with sharp, glowing eyes. Even the bride fixed her piercing gaze upon him. "This is bad," the young man muttered, realizing his mistake. He turned and fled down the mountain path as fast as he could. The foxes gave chase, their voices carried by the wind. "A human has seen us. We cannot let him go unpunished." The young man ran with all his might, weaving through the trees and descending the mountain. When the young man finally reached his village, the foxes were nowhere to be seen. Relieved, he recounted his tale to the villagers, who listened with astonishment. "That must have been the fox's wedding," an elder said. "It's said that seeing such a procession can bring either great fortune or misfortune. You'd best be cautious from now on." From that day forward, the young man's life was marked by moments of unexpected luck and peculiar events. Each time he ventured into the mountains, He would recall the fox's wedding procession and the stunning bride. The memory reminded him of the delicate balance of nature and the importance of living in harmony with it. The end. That's all for now. See you next time.